Is it fair to wonder if this is still real from the Boston Celtics? I'll talk about that with Chad Finn of the Globe. And is it also fair to have Ben Simmons come back in a series? What can he do if he even comes back? We're going to talk about it right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day and part of your daily routine Monday through Friday. This show is free, available wherever you get your podcasts. So download the show, put it in your favorite podcasting app, take it with you in the car on your way to work because people are going back to work, and enjoy a nice ride to work without radio, without sports talk, blah, 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 all that craziness. Or you can watch the show on YouTube. I would love for you to watch the show on YouTube. Obviously, this is why I put the videos out there and all of that. So subscribe to YouTube. This has been a lot of fun doing the YouTube show. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I was one of the media voters for the Celtics 75th anniversary team. And today I'm talking to the Globe's Chad Finn, friend of mine, and that Celtics, a longtime writer covering the Celtics and other sports for the Globe. Grew up watching the team like I did. Has some great stories and great perspective. Later on, we're going to talk about his piece about Danny Ainge and giving Danny Ainge proper credit for building this team. We'll talk about Ben Simmons in the second segment. I asked him about the adjustments, and one of those adjustments is Ben Simmons, and I just don't think it's fair. We'll get into that in the second segment. But let's just kick things off here and wonder aloud, is it still fair to think, is this real? Chad Finn, man, it's been a minute here. How you doing?
Good, man. Always good to catch up and see you and talk about this basketball team, especially when things are going well, like they did for the last 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a ride. I don't know. I feel like we've taken this look back, and it's always like, man, I can't believe that they're here. I can't believe it. Like, there's this is this real kind of feeling.
Oh yeah,
let's start with this. Let's just start with this question: is it fair to talk to say about these guys? Is this real? Because they've done it longer than they haven't. You can argue that COVID and the injuries and Schroeder wasn't the right fit, and once a lot of those things kind of got cleared away, this has just been who they are. Is it fair to ask, is this real?
I think it's fair. I just think you need to come to the correct answer, which is yes, it's real. After a month, it was okay to be skeptical. They deserve skepticism based on the last couple of years, and particularly the dismal way they played in the first half of the season, where no lead was safe in the fourth quarter, and old bad habits came back at the worst possible time if they ever left in the first place, and all those things you wanted to see corrected that you hoped would change with individuals and with the team as a whole just didn't happen for those first 39 games, at least when they're 18-21. A lot of people, I guess, are looking at that as the low point, but when you get to 2 months and then you get to 3 months and there are very few hiccups, you'll have a game here and there where Jaylen's shot selection's bad. Marcus feels like he needs to be the third scorer and takes bad shots. Temporary regression, brief regression, but it's not sustained, and they bounce back out of it, and they go out and build those 20-point lead after 20-point lead, no matter who they're playing. And I don't know what the tipping point was, but somewhere along the way in those 3 months, you really should have bought in 100% because they proved it over and over again.
Yeah, that's where I am. And you and I are generally like-minded when it comes to this stuff. And that's why I think this could be a 5-game series. I just don't see how Brooklyn's defense can stop what the Celtics have been doing. And it's no disrespect to Brooklyn as far as Kevin Durant and what Kyrie Irving is capable of and all of that stuff. It's just the rest of that team, it wasn't built for this. It was built to have these two guys and Harden, and to have two of those guys on the floor at all times and not have to play 45 minutes a game to make sure you have two of those guys on the floor at all times. And so it just things went wrong for them this season. You can blame Kyrie's vaccine stance for
I'll do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear that his stance turned off James Harden.
Yes.
James Harden decided I'm out of here. And that was kind of like the beginning of the end. So I don't know, man. If I'm buying into what those past 3.5 months have been, then I look at their team and this team, and I think the Celtics are just a better team. That Kevin Durant can do what he does, but Jayson Tatum can kind of get close to matching him, if not matching him completely. Jaylen Brown and Kyrie Irving can be a wash on some nights. Maybe sometimes Kyrie goes off and whatever, that's fine. But then you still have to deal with Al Horford. You still have to deal with all of these other kind of supporting pieces for the Celtics that are just better than the supporting pieces for the Nets. I don't know. What do you think about how this series might go?
The Celtics are the team now where the pieces fit, and that hasn't been the case for a while. Even beginning this season when Schroeder is a good basketball player, but he was not the right fit, and he's a ball pounder, and Pritchard got marginalized, and all sorts of things that they remedied. They went out and got Derek White, Josh Richardson. They turned into something. Romeo, they turned into something in that deal, and all of a sudden, everybody was in the role that they were supposed to be in, and they brought in. We saw the glue woman last night with the Minnesota game. I'm sorry, but Derek White's the glue guy, right? He's the guy who came in here, and we associate Ime with the Spurs, but he was with the Nets last year. He knows the Nets as well as anybody.
Yeah.
But we associate him with the Spurs because what he wants is what the Spurs did when they were at their best. They moved the ball to the point where you end up with YouTube highlights of them that run for 12, 13 minutes of just them making great passes and getting it open shots. And the Celtics have looked like that sometimes, and it reminds us of that. And defensively, they played the way that he implored them to, just ferocious all the time and switching and making life difficult for everybody on the court at all 48 minutes. And so this is the first time in a while where it felt like the Celtics are going into a series where everything, other than, Rob Williams' injury, and he may be back in the series, everything was the way you wanted it to be, the way the roster was constructed. And I understand, and I know you do too, I understand why people are picking the Nets or might pick the Nets or be tempted to, because we know what it looks like when they play well. Kyrie's unstoppable. He shoots 12 for 15 or whatever he was last night. Durant, when Durant's on, and he usually is, you're basically at the whim of whether or not he misses a shot because he's pretty much unguardable. Right. And we know what it looks like if the Nets win a game in this series. They get something from Dragic. Drummond scores a couple on offensive rebounds, and maybe Curry's ankle looks good and he drills a couple of key threes, and the two superstars are great. But that's not sustainable. And this is a horrible defensive team. And they're the ones in this series whose pieces don't fit, even though they have two really good, superstar pieces. And Durant's a top 10, top 12 player all time in climbing the list. But he's not going to be able to do it alone against the Celtics team or with occasional aid from Kyrie against the Celtics team that is the better team, as you said, going into the series.
Yeah, I just let's go back to their last loss, which was the Atlanta Hawks. Kevin Durant, 19 of 28, 8 of 10 from 3, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, 55 points. Kyrie Irving, 31 points, 12 of 32 from the field, 7 of 14 from three. They combined for 86 points, and they lost to the Atlanta Hawks because no one else scored in double digits. Because you can do that. You can have a night where Durant and Irving are sublime, that they are the entire game. I can picture how the game will go. It's just going to be Durant and Kyrie going back and forth and doing all of their stuff in like Sports Center and Dime and all of these Twitter accounts that tweet out like highlight after highlight after highlight after highlight, and they're going to be down 8 to the Celtics at halftime. Like that's the type of game that I can see moving forward. Like that's or they'll have a halftime lead and then they'll give up 70 points to the Celtics in the second half because Ime has adjustments to make and Steve Nash has basically no adjustments. Back with more from Chad. Again, that Ben Simmons discussion is coming up next. First, let's talk about BetOnline, which has the Celtics as favorites, minus 130 to win this series. I know Brooklyn opened up as favorites, but the money quickly flipped. Celtics are now favored in this series, minus 130. If you want to go on over to BetOnline, you can lay some money down. It's your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's basketball playoffs, and play-in games as well, where I'm recording this after the Atlanta Hawks just destroyed Charlotte. And then I'm going to wrap this up and catch the end of the Pelicans and Spurs. So it's going to be a lot of interesting stuff there. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. Head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device to do so. Learn about all the trends and actions. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA, where I'm one of the hosts. I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. It's a rotating set of hosts Monday through Friday. It's a free daily podcast just like this one, and you can find it where you got this one, and you can also find it on YouTube, Locked On NBA channel on YouTube. Go check it out. Now, let's get into the Ben Simmons discussion with Chad Finn.
Right.
I just don't see, and I'll bring you in. I had Tom Westerholm on yesterday, and I said this to him. I'd love your perspective on this. I say they have no adjustments that they can make. I don't see what they can do materially to adjust in this series. Other than like, what are they going to, they switch and then they play some zone defense. And that's it. What are they going to do? They don't play anything else.
Yeah.
There's no Nick Nurse triangle on 2 that they're going to implement. There's none of that stuff. And they don't have, so I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And you have the Celtics just based on what the players that Ime has at his disposal have far more options for adjusting than New Jersey does. New Jersey, I always call them that. Brooklyn does.
I do that too, man.
I still picture the New Jersey uniforms.
And they started wearing one this season. They started wearing a New Jersey Nets.
The Nets logo.
So now they throw you off a little bit. Like once they started doing that, instinctively, I just started saying New Jersey. I'm sure I've snuck those in. They're probably still in some of my pieces.
Well, that's how that's what they need in the series is vintage Derek Coleman and Kenny Anderson coming off the bench, who are younger than some of the guys on their bench probably. But I mean, you look over there and they've got names. I mean, Blake Griffin's down there at the end of the bench. LaMarcus Aldridge is back, and he's had his success against the Celtics in the past, but he can't move anymore. He's a shell of what he was, of what he was last year. They get bumped up by name recognition in a lot of ways. I think everybody around here, even with his relatively innocuous comments last night, that got blown a little bit of a proportion. I think people appreciate Bruce Brown. He's a Boston, local kid, and a kind of a scrappy type of player. He'll have his moments in the series, but the Nets don't have enough of those guys. And you look at the Celtics, and they've got Jayson, who's the alpha dog now, and Jaylen, who hasn't changed a whole lot. He's still just the same, pretty well-rounded player. No, not a great ball handler, but will get you your points and is making the defensive effort as the number 2 guy. And Marcus knows his role, and Al and Tice should have a field day inside against the Nets if the ball is moving, and Pritchard's a killer shooter, and White's shots coming around, and they just have so many different things. Grant, so many different things in their favor that the Nets, because of the way their roster is built, just won't be able to muster these things. And you said 5. That's how I feel. I feel like there's going to be one game where the Nets go off, and SportsCenter is going to go nuts, and the Celtics are going to come back and win by 18 the next night.
Right. It feels like it's a setup. The Celtics win 2 home games. You go back to Brooklyn, they win game 3, and then it's like, whoa, okay, we've got a series, and then Boston comes out and drops the hammer in game 3, and then all the conversation switches to it goes back to Kyrie and James Harden. Like, seriously, the next day, if the Celtics 3-1, it's going to be Stephen A. and James Harden and Kyrie. One potential adjustment that is somewhere in there, I haven't talked about much, is this Ben Simmons stuff, which I just think it would be an absolute negligence on Brooklyn's part to throw Ben Simmons. And I'm not saying that because they're playing the Celtics. I'm saying that because this guy, like, you can't just take a guy who hasn't played all year, who's coming off a herniated disc, and then say, okay, your first game is going to be in a playoff series against a team whose defensive mantra from Ime Udoka the other day was, hey, they can't call all the fouls, so why don't we be the most physical team out there? Like, you can't have him getting chipped on the way through the lane, and then say, yeah, go be like Ben Simmons, like the real Ben Simmons. Like, no way, man. It's just, I think this is a smokescreen. But do you think there's any chance that Ben Simmons can come in and make any kind of impact?
I think it would play completely into the Celtics' hands. I've heard. Yeah, it's a sports radio topic. Well-known star, controversial player, lots of talent, and a little bit of mystery around him, to say the least. Could possibly show up in this series. But I'll tell you, I've been watching basketball in the Celtics my whole life. I remember one time where a guy sort of came out of nowhere and contributed. Derek Smith in the early 90s for the Celtics. The guy had been a great player for the Clippers in the 80s, blew his knees out. Nolan Smith's dad, the kid who played at Duke, just a tenacious player. They signed him and didn't play him, and hit him late in the until very late in the season, and then unleashed him in the playoff series. I think it was against Indiana, and he gave them a couple of great moments. His knees didn't hold up beyond that, but he came out of basketball purgatory to help. But he was a mentally tough guy who wanted to be out there. We don't know what, for better or worse, we don't know what Ben Simmons' mental state is. He said he has dealt with some things. You have to take his word for that. And it would be absurd from that angle. It would be absurd from the he hasn't played in a year angle, as you said, to put him out there. And as local sports radio guys are suggesting, shut down Jayson Tatum for 4 or 5 minutes at a time. You put him on Tatum after being out of the not playing for a year, he's going to get destroyed. And I don't care how good he was. He's one of the best, maybe the best defender in the league. But with this absence, with his physical condition, and with the way Jayson Tatum is playing basketball, he would wreck him. And I don't want to see it happen, because I think it, as you said, right, it would be horrible of the Nets to do this right now. But if it does, it's not going to go well for Brooklyn.
Look, and I get the desire, and especially game's not till Sunday. Got to talk about something, right?
Right.
And so here's a nice juicy hypothetical. Nothing sports talk radio loves more than a nice juicy hypothetical that has no chance of happening,
and one that makes you worry.
Yeah. That guys, people go, oh, you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Brooklyn Nets play. I mean, it's bad defense, but they have a style of defense, right? They switch everything, or they'll play some zone. Now, are you telling me that you're going to put Ben Simmons on Jayson Tatum, and the Celtics are just not going to set a pick for Jayson Tatum? They're not going to call over Kyrie's guy and set a pick for Jayson Tatum. And okay, so if he switches, then great. then that's it. It's game over. If he doesn't switch, is he the only guy who's not going to switch? You know what that's going to lead to? Confusion, because every other guy on that team is used to switching. It's your muscle memory. You know that you're switching with these guys. And then what's going to happen is two guys are going to go in one direction, and Tatum, sure, you want to take the ball out of Tatum's hands? Well, all of a sudden, it's basically going to be an unintended blitz of Tatum. He's just going to dump it off to Kyrie's guy. It's probably Marcus Smart, and Marcus Smart's going to whip it out to the corner, and Jaylen Brown's going to be standing there. He's going to hit a three, and he's going to do his little kiss. Now, Jayson does the kiss now. Jaylen does I forget whatever he does. Like, Jaylen used to do the kiss. Jaylen was right, by the way, like a couple of weeks ago when he said that Tatum stole the kiss from him. Jaylen was doing the kiss first.
Was he really? I don't remember the Jaylen kiss. I
can confirm that Jaylen would, because he would every once in a while hit a three and he would blow a kiss, especially to the other team's bench. He would do that to the other team's bench. Now, Jayson remixed it and did to the crowd.
Yeah.
But that is, they can both do it. There's plenty of room for blowing kisses to the crowd after 3-pointers. I mean, I'm happy to see more of it. But anyway, I just, the concept in the abstract, yes, I get what they're saying. But in practice, in reality, on the floor, okay, you're gonna put Ben Simmons in there. Al Horford's gonna hit him with the hardest pick that Al's gonna set, and they're gonna set that up. And
old man strength.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I don't think that that's gonna go how anybody on the Brooklyn side thinks that that's gonna go. And I'll be clear for the Brooklyn Nets fans who have now swarmed to the YouTube channel. I want the Brooklyn Nets to play Ben Simmons because that helps the Celtics. For Ben Simmons' sake, because I do skew player first. Don't do this.
Me too. Yeah.
Don't do this to him. Don't. Like, I want Ben Simmons to be good. I got nothing against Ben Simmons. I want him to play good basketball.
I loved watching him play.
He can be pretty amazing. Let him go get his revenge against the Sixers. Like, as Celtics fans, you probably just want, let him get going and get his revenge against the Sixers and figure things out next year. But I don't see it working how any of the, I'll call them fearmongers, will say that it would work.
No, it's just, taking a familiar name and trying to look at the last 3 months and find a way to make Celtics fans feel concerned about it, that it could go back to the way it was. And Ben Simmons is not going to do that. You know what I want to see? You were talking about the defense and the switching and what New Jersey tries to do. I want to see Kyrie at some point in the series wave somebody off to guard Tatum. Because that's when you know it's over. That's that when he's it's the old Giannis. I got Giannis here, and then do the old Olay as he goes by 3 straight times. That's a white flag. That's what it is.
Again, for the Brooklyn fans, if you see that happening and the Celtics are down 3-1, and he's consistently switching on to Tatum and getting roasted, then he's signing with the Pacers next year or something. He's not sticking around. That's his tell. That's like what's his name for the Teddy KGB with the Oreos. That's his tell. It's like if he's switching and letting the guy go, he's on his way out. He's going to go try to sign with Miami or wherever. So, is there anything here that actually does legitimately, aside from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, does anything here worry you about this team? Because I can't think of anything besides those two.
No, just kind of on what I said before, a few different random things going the right way for them at the same time. Dragic hitting a couple of shots, Drummond, Bruce Brown doing Bruce Brown things, and
sure.
One other guy, Aldridge having a throwback to 2017 for 10 minutes or something like that, But I don't think that's going to happen for more than a very small increment of time, probably in one game. And really, the only things you have to fear are the things you know really well. You know what Kevin Durant is. You know what Kyrie is. You know what they're going to do. And you're as great as they are. You probably have a second best player in the series. You have a guy who has an argument, not there yet, but an argument that he might be the best player in the series based on the way he's played the last couple of months in Tatum. and you have, if you're doing a draft of both teams right now, Celtics players would be rapidly picked in succession in that 6 to 10, 6 to 12 range. It would be probably 5, even 5. It would be they're just the deeper team, the better team, the more well-rounded team. And I've seen no reason beyond the fear mongering to think that they're not going to come out and prove this.
We'll be back to give Danny Ainge a little bit of love based on Chad's piece from Boston.com last week. First, let's talk about Shady Rays, which is an independent sunglasses company that gives you all of the features of $200 glasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, means well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. It also means that you're going to get something you can't find anywhere else. Shady Rays, it's their insane protection program that includes lost and broken protection for every single pair. You lose a pair, no matter what, they will send you a brand new one. No questions asked. Give them a try. If you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop Shady Rays. That's really cool. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. This is just a matter of keeping your heads. To me, this series is a matter of keeping your heads.
Trying to do too much, right. that could happen in the first game for a little while.
Don't get caught up. If KD hits 3 shots in a row, don't get caught up in it. Kyrie, go, if you're down, 20-5, don't get caught up in it. It's, in the first quarter, like it's early. Just keep it going. Keep doing
your stuff.
Just keep doing your stuff. Don't get caught up. Like that's going to be the discipline. It's a very military regimented. Just don't worry, but it's just keep doing your job. No matter what you see going on around you, keep doing your job. If the Celtics can do that, they're going to be fine because that Brooklyn defense is just garbage, hot garbage, and eventually it will give up a lot of points. So, and the Celtics defense is too damn good to go through significant stretches of that.
What I want in this series? I want them to stay healthy because it seems like every year something something happens that, it was Jaylen getting hurt last. I mean, we don't even have to run down the litany of injuries they've dealt with the last 5-6 years. Even going back to when Hayward got here, if you go back that far, and Kyrie, but just stay healthy, get through this with bumps and bruises, not losing guys to, calves and obliques and all of that stuff that's plagued them. Because if they are here and Rob comes back and is a pretty good percentage of what he usually is, this is a damn good basketball team still, and they can play for a long time. But they just they need good fortune in terms of health for once, because I think they've got it for the most part this year. But recent past has been cruel.
Sure. Now, part of that depth and health you wrote about, and I do want to, before we get going here, I want to get your take, on the Danny Ainge element to all of this, because it's I've been Ryan Bernardoni, who I referenced a bunch this week, but at Danger Card on Twitter, a really good tweet about the Executive of the Year award. And he made a great point. He's like, we should be voting on the 2018 Executive of the Year award today. Because we don't know if things have worked out. Now, maybe this year we can say, I think Brad Stevens has a really good shot at it because, he's made critical moves, like getting in Al Horford for Kemba Walker looks great. Getting Daniel Tice for Dennis Schroeder looks great. Getting Derek White looks great. Like, these are key moves for the Celtics. So, but to his point, look at this Celtics team and all the grief that Danny Ainge took around here. The starting 5 for the Celtics coming into this series: Marcus Smart, he drafted 6th. Jaylen Brown, he drafted 3rd. Jayson Tatum, he drafted 3rd. Horford, he signed as a free agent. Daniel Tice, he plucked out of Germany. And he drafted Grant Williams. He drafted Peyton Pritchard. So he's drafted 5 of their key contributors in this run. And brought, basically you can count Daniel Tice a little bit in that.
Yeah.
He actually is the architect of this team, like about 80% of what this team has done. And then Brad Stevens comes in with about 20% of critical moves to get this thing over the top. But I think it's worth noting that Danny Ainge did all of this stuff.
It reminds me, as I wrote, I think I touched on a little bit in the column. It reminds me of what the Red Sox did back in the early 2000s when they fired Dan Duquette, who had signed Manny Ramirez, got Jayson Veritek in a steal of a trade, traded for Pedro Martinez, got the superstars here, Johnny Damon, beloved, excellent player, but didn't fill in around the edges right. He went the bargain basement route on everything. He had no farm system, and they had Pedro at the front of their pitching rotation, and number two, they had some guy who had shoulder surgery 2 years ago. That was always the case. They brought in Theo Epstein. He signed good quality players that fit what they needed. It sounds simple, but it's hard to do. You just don't know who's on the market, who's available, who's willing to come to cold Boston, all sorts of variables. And you got Bill Miller and Kevin Millar and David Ortiz, and filled out the gaps and the holes on the roster, built a bullpen. And that reminds me of what Brad did. Danny was a better general manager in basketball by far than Dan Duquette was in baseball. But, Danny, they had too many guys on the roster last year and the last couple of years who weren't going to contribute anything. You could tell that they were guys who needed a second chance to go somewhere, needed to play in the G League. We're just kind of taking up space. There were, guys who just didn't kind of fit into the role that they needed them to play. And Brad came in here, and I think it's harder to do in the NBA than any other sport, and shuffled the deck with, by getting rid of Kemba's contract for Al, which, I think most people are happy to see Al come back. Everybody liked him, but we didn't really know what he was as a player at that point. He's basically Al. He's still the same guy, more or less. Stats are down a little bit, but still does all those Al things, especially in the second half. And that Kemba contract is a disaster. That would have hamstrung them for a long time until they got rid of it. So that was a brilliant move, and that was like move one. And Derek White, they identified a guy who had the attributes on and off the court that they needed to help this team fit together more correctly. Just one thing after another like that, I thought Brad would be good in the role, but I think there was a lot of speculation when he took it that he, maybe he wasn't really sure he wanted to go upstairs. Maybe he was kicked upstairs. Maybe he was just doing it because, he wanted to be home with his family more, but it wasn't something that interested him long term. And he threw himself into it and done a phenomenal job. I didn't want to see Danny go. I really like Danny. Danny was good to the Globe. He talked to people. But it was the right thing to do. It's worked out really well. And I just want to see Danny get some credit for what he did before he left, because he took a lot of crap for picking Grant Williams. Peyton Pritchard, people thought, was just a kind of a fringe bench guy after a fast start last year. You got Rob Williams at 27. These are all great moves. And, you touched on it. It doesn't get it doesn't get enough noise or it's not shouted from the rooftops that the Lakers could have taken Jayson Tatum at number 2.
Yeah.
But the Sixers and the Lakers didn't identify what he was. Danny Ainge did, and he had the guts to trade out of that one spot, knowing the player he wanted, and to sit there at 3 and get the guy who's by far the best player in the draft when arguably the two maybe not arguably, the two biggest rivals in Celtics history were sitting there ahead of them in the Sixers and Lakers. And that takes Sam Cassell big ones right there to do that. And it's worked out as well as, any recent trade in NBA history when you really think about it.
Yeah. And, I did tweet this out because I mentioned every once in a while I'm writing something and I find a little nugget or something. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna tweet this out. And it was that the Celtics had traded down to get Jayson Tatum. They not only have Jayson Tatum, they were able to trade down and still get him, which is crazy to think right now. And you're right. The Lakers, they might have been able to do something with Lonzo, but okay, fine. They traded him away to get Anthony Davis. I get it. Philly just botched it for sure. And if the one of the what ifs in the Danny Ainge era is, what if the Sacramento Kings had just not gone off the way they did that year, because they had the pick that they got from Philly was the Kings pick, and that ended up being the 14th pick where they got Romeo Langford. If that thing had been in the top 10, who knows who they could have gotten. Tyler Hero could have been a Celtic.
So everybody thought, yeah. I don't know how valid that was, but yeah, everybody thought Hero was Danny's guy, right?
Yeah, I mean that would have been amazing. Now I don't know what the net effect is. You bring him in, it's not the same situation as Miami. Blah blah blah. Who knows how it goes? But still, the point is that you traded down, you got a first round pick, and it Sacramento botched it for Danny Ainge.
They did, yeah. And Hero doesn't drop 37 on the Celtics in the bubble either in a playoff game if he's here. So you wouldn't have had to deal with the Heat version of him when he was a rookie, which is a hell of a player. But yeah, I mean that's what frustrates me, John. When people, I don't know how to categorize them. It's not the common fan. Maybe it's the fan who gets their talking points a little bit too much, not from what they see themselves or what they read, but from what they hear. Yes. If they have their radio on. But it's extremely difficult to get a good player after 10, 11 in the NBA draft, just in general. It's going to be a couple of guys every year, but you can't sit there and say 3 years later, we should have taken that guy. We should have known Giannis was going to go 3 inches and have a maniacal work ethic and, be an all around wonderful human being like he seems to be. You couldn't have known then, you didn't know. And it's a reason 14 he went 15, 14 teams when I picked ahead of him. I wish they had ended up with Desmond Bain, although Grant's ended up being a really positive force for the Celtics in a couple of different ways. But you can't sit there and just say, he screwed up, we should have gotten this guy. It's one guy in 15 picks who ends up having an effect in the league. We should have got Jokic in the second round. You just don't know. They're all wild cards beyond a certain point. And frankly, if you go back and look at Basketball Reference and draft from whatever year, 2005, they don't even come close to being in the order of how the players' careers ended up going. It was like Bogut and Paul, right, that year, and guys like that. You don't know. Nobody knows, even the people who work their whole lives, and you need a little bit of luck mixed in there and to go with your savvy. And I think if you're looking at Danny's track record, honestly, you have to be impressed by it if you can keep it in context of how that drafting players really is and the degree of difficulty he had to deal with in a lot of different cases.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think at this time it is worth giving him some of that due. Again, it takes a little while, and I didn't even Robert Williams, because he's hurt, didn't even come into my mind. Four out of the 5 guys in the starting lineup were Danny Ainge draft picks. So that's hard to do. To be this good in a 2 seed. That's hard to do, to put a team together like that. So if you haven't read it, it's on Boston.com. Go read Chad's stuff on Boston.com and the Globe. Chad, always appreciate you coming on. We'll have you on to celebrate a championship, maybe.
Yeah, I always love coming on, John. So glad to do any time. I feel like we're looking at a good run here, and it's going to be an enjoyable couple of weeks.
All right, thanks to Chad. Go check him out. He's at Globe Chad Finn on Twitter. He's a really fun guy to talk to. And hopefully we will have him back for a celebration podcast. Tomorrow, I get into it with the Locked On Nets podcast crossover episode to preview Game 1. Crossover episode to preview Game 1 is tomorrow. You do not want to miss that. There's going to be a lot of smack being talked back and forth, but they're fun guys to talk to. They're really good, so it should be a really great podcast. So make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your pods. Check them out. Subscribe to this one. Also on YouTube, you can pop this show, cast it onto your TV while you're doing your chores, cooking your dinner or whatever, or put it on a tab in the background at work, and you can listen to, maybe you listen to half of it in the car and the other half you can watch on YouTube. However you want to do it, wherever you want to subscribe, I do appreciate you doing so. And if you are a subscriber, anytime you can share the podcast would be great. Tell your friends, tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.